Yo, what up guys, it's Yeti here. In today's video, I will be showing you guys 20 tips that I've learned as a beginner in Path of Exile 2, and you should learn these as well. A lot of these tips were shared with people from my Twitch chat when I was streaming. A lot of them were also learned from places like Reddit and Twitter, and I wanted to kind of collect all of them together into this one video that you can show to your beginner friends, or if you're a beginner yourself, you can look at this video and learn a lot of these new things for yourself. So tip number 1, you can activate enemy and player health bars in the settings. So what I'm talking about is this health bar right here on top of my player and health bars above my minions. You can enable this by going into the options, navigating into interface, scrolling down, and there will be an option that says mini life bar above NPCs. You want to turn to allies and enemies, and also have mini life bar enabled for yourself. So these are green bars from my allies, and you'll also have red bars for the enemies. And this will make it a lot easier to track how much, health your minions have or how much health the enemy mobs have. Yes, and so this is how the health bars look like for enemies. As you can see, these are my skeletons, these are enemy skeletons, and with this setting, it's a lot easier to tell which is which. Tip number 2, I would highly recommend you to turn off screen shake in the settings. So again, we're going to navigate into options, interface. We will scroll down to visual sensitivity, and there's an option called screen shake, and we want to disable this. The reason we want to disable this because screen shake is used only as a cosmetical effect that will shake your screen, but in actual gameplay scenario, it's only annoying. It does nothing good for you. Tip number 3, you can use Control+Click to reset instances. And what I'm talking about is you can open up the waypoint like this here. Okay, once the creeps will be gone, we will be able to interact with this like this. And okay, we want to reset Keth. We will hold down Control, click on this, and it's going to give us, you're about to enter Keth, choose an instance, and we can make a new instance like this. And once we're loaded in, the map has been, covered up again. It's not discovered, and every single monster respawned. And this is how you can actually farm certain bosses in the game. Tip number 4, bind your skills to comfortable keys. So as you know, in Path of Exile 2, you have mouse button 1, 2, and middle mouse button, and skills Q, E, R, T, F, okay? And you can actually bind any skill here. So even mouse 1 is default. I think it's bound to your attack of your weapon. I don't have a weapon that has a spell on it right now, but for example, raise shield. You can actually just remove this and bind something completely differently on it. So for me, it's unearth. That's what I'm using. I'm spamming most of the time, and it makes it a lot comfortable and easier to play. But you will notice that I have every single skill slot already taken. Where are the other skills? While you're holding down Control, you also get Control+Q, Control+E. So you get modifier keys as well, and you can bind extra spells on here. So you can also have a spell on Control-E. That's going to work the same exact way. This comes in handy later when you're dealing with a lot more spells on your character. Tip number 5, you can use the weapon swap feature in combat. In Path of Exile 2, you can have 2 weapons equipped. You've already noticed that. Weapon number 1, weapon number 2. And the way you can do that in combat is you press the X key, and it's going to just swap to the other active weapon in combat. And this can be very useful because some weapons come with abilities. For example, my weapon number 1 summons all these skeletons, etc. Weapon number 2, for example, gives me living bomb, I think it's called. So it depends. If I'm fighting bosses, I might want to use a different setup. Tip number 7 is about flasks. Flasks and Path of Exile 2 are the things that either heal you or give you mana over X amount of seconds. But you will notice that they can also have some sort of benefits to them in blue text. They can, just like items, have these special effects. For example, my life flask actually gives life to minions that I have summoned, while my mana flask gets charges per second. So it's going to be filling up naturally as I'm playing the game. And this is very, very useful. So the amount is not the only thing you should be looking out for. Tip number 8, you actually do not care about the color of the item as much as you care about the stats specifically. Especially when you're in the first couple of acts, the items are going to be leveling up a lot faster. So just because something is a yellow item, it does not mean it's giving you enough useful stuff. Like, for example, this shield is giving me energy shield, it's giving me fire resistance, cold resistance, but then it's giving me physical thorns on damage. And I'm not really playing the kind of build where thorns matters. So that's actually completely useless, right? But the other couple of abilities are useful. This is just an example, right? The gauze wraps I have here, again, cold resistance, lightning resistance, gain life, enemy killed, maximum life. It's not as useful as some like offensive stats or like spirit or something would be. I don't know if spirit specifically can be on gloves because I'm not that far into the late game yet, but that's something I really learned as I was playing the game. Don't only look at the color, look at the actual stats and how they are able to be applied to your class. All right, so for tip number 9, we're gonna need an uncut support gem. And once you're using your uncut support gem, you will notice that it's only giving you a couple of support gems for each specific spell. Well, you can click show recommended gems, and this is going to unlock every single support gem you can use for that ability. And it's going to make the customization for your class seem unmatched to any game you've previously played. This is, for example, Skeletal Sniper, tier 1 support gems. I can pick from so many different ones. It's actually crazy. Tip number 10 is your shops refresh every time, each time you level up. So for example, this NPC here in the second act town, we can talk to her and she gives you items. These items are not going to refresh per hour or per day. They instead change their items every single time you level up. So whenever you level up, it's really worth using a town scroll or a town portal and checking what is up in the new vendors. Number 11 is about resistances. There are 4 resistances in Path of Exile 2. Each of them can cap at 75%. You can check these, by the way, by opening the C character menu on your character. So for example, right now I have 25 fire resistance, up to maximum 75 is how much you can build up to. And it's very, very nice to cap these because this is how you make your character not get one shot. You will notice sometimes if you're fighting a boss that is doing, for example, lightning damage and it's one-shotting you, you will go then check the resistances. Oh, you're only on 3%. So it'd be really, really good for you to get an item for that boss specifically to make sure you can, maybe live 1 or 2 hits from that boss. Tip number 12, comparing DPS. The way I often judge a weapon, this is more applicable when I'm playing something like a ranger, when I'm always using a bow, at least with the build I was playing with. I try to check how much DPS I'm doing with a specific weapon setup. For example, Flame Wall is currently doing 43 DPS. If I swap to the other weapon, it's doing 50 DPS. So it means that in my build 2, on my second weapon, I'm doing more damage with Flame Wall by 7, right? So this is how we can kind of apply statistics of how much DPS you get from a specific weapon in your class. Tip number 13, you can actually see how many deaths you have in total by doing /deaths in chat. So for example, I have died 22 times on this character specifically, and it's really nice to compare with your friends. Sometimes people will say, oh, I've never died, and this is how you can see how much you're actually dying on Path of Exile 2. Tip number 14, you can actually open up the passive 3 by pressing P. We all already know that. This is where all the passive skills are for your character. What you can do is you can use the search function. For example, minions is what I'm interested in because I'm playing a class that is summoning minions. And as you can see, some nodes started pulsating, and these pulsating nodes have the word minion in them. And this is how you can see which way it's worth for you to build your class. We can also, for example, do fire. Now we have all the fire damage nodes popping up. This is very, very nice when you're building a class yourself and you don't want to follow a guide, which by the way is really cool. I love that about Path of Exile 2. You have so much freedom when it comes to your class and how you want to play this game. Tip number 15, you can move the minimap with arrow keys. I haven't unlocked much of the map in this specific situation where I'm in right now, but it doesn't matter either way. Once you open up your map and you do tab to bring it in the middle, you can actually use arrow keys to scroll through it. And this comes really in handy when you're dealing with a big map and you're looking for a specific gate or something you have not yet explored. Tip number 16 is about dismantling. You can dismantle weapons and items with sockets, for example, to get reagents to later put sockets onto weapons you actually want them to have that. This is called salvage bench. If you do not have a salvage bench, by the way, you can have them in all 3 acts. I'll show you now where to get it. I believe you unlock it from the Ogham village. I know it's the village that is on fire, and you will find a salvage bench on the floor, and you will later talk to the blacksmith, and he's going to actually place it in the village, and you can start dismantling items. Tip number 17, you can choose the transparency of the landscape that you want to have on your mini-map and overlay map in the interface settings. So for example, right now you see that the terrain that is around my map is almost impossible to see. This is because I've configured it this way. If you go into options interface, if you scroll down to map, you will have these 2 bars. And these two bars will decide how high is the opacity of, for example, terrain and the map itself. So if you want to be super optimal, you could put the map all the way to the top and terrain/landscape all the way to the bottom. You can also select the zoom of the map here if you want to make it bigger or smaller. Tip number 18. There is something called resistance icons in Path of Exile 2. I will show you on the screen what I'm talking about. Red colored symbols means that the mob is weak to a certain kind of damage. Gray means they have a light resistance. Yellow means they have heavy resistance. Chest armor therefore means that it's some sort of physical resistance or that they take more physical damage. Flame is for fire. Snowflake is for cold. And lightning, well, that's for lightning. Number 19 is going to be very useful for everyone who's playing in the early access. As you know right now, Path of Exile has a ton of players and very, very laggy servers. You can press F1 to open up your FPS graph and press F1 again to open up your net graph and to see what is going on with your game, how much ping you have, how much FPS you have, and things of that sort. And it's very good because right now the game gets very laggy, and if you're maybe playing hardcore, you gotta make sure that your ping is as low as it can be. And the last tip number 20, you can check the specifics of a spell by clicking the arrow at the end of DPS. What I'm talking about is this arrow right here. Once you press this, of course, you have to open the skills menu first. You're going to actually see the damage per second, average damage per use, total damage. It's also going to show you the physical damage, how many casts you can do, and things of that sort. I also like the fact that it has the critical damage bonus on it and all other things that you might want to know about your class. Thank you guys for watching this video. I hope you are enjoying Path of Exile 2 as much as I am. I'm absolutely loving it, and I'm also really excited for the full game to come out. Do keep in mind that once the full game comes out, everything that you do in early access will be reset. Therefore, this is the perfect time for you to use to learn the game, to learn how things work, and be ready for full release in probably 6 months or so. Thank you guys for watching this video. Make sure to subscribe if you want to see more, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace out.